Hi, I'm Earl Parson. Welcome to Quonset Q&A. I'm an architect who is obsessed with Quonset huts, and I'm here to share my knowledge with you so that you can have a successful Quonset hut build or any kind of project that you're working on. I think there's a lot of things we'll talk about that are applicable to any construction project if you're building a house. So join us and let's learn some new things together. Today I want to talk about some questions that came up from over in the Facebook group. So we have a really fun Facebook group with, it's called DIY Quonset Dwellers. So folks that are wanting to build their own Quonset hut house have joined the Facebook group. It's a fun community of sharing information and talking about our Quonset projects and lots of good stuff going on over in the Facebook group. So if you would like to get in on that, we would love to have you join. So go over to clevermoderns.com/group, and from there it will direct you straight into the Facebook group to the ask to join the group page. You can also go on Facebook and just search DIY Quonset Dwellers, and you can find the group that way. Either way, it just takes you straight to that link, and you can request to join the group. Now, I asked a few questions there at the beginning to try and make sure people that are serious about it are wanting to join the group. So one of the questions is, how did you hear about the group? Just say you heard about it from the YouTube video. And if you, whether you are, the three questions are, how did you hear about the group, and are you going to build your own Quonset, or are you just sort of curious about them? And something else similar to that. I should have this in front of me. I will have it right here. So the questions are, how did you hear about our group? What is your favorite thing about Quonset huts? That's what I was forgetting. And do you hope to build a Quonset of your own, or are you just curious about them? Just throw some answers in there. I just want to make sure there's a live person on the other end that's somewhat engaged here. And we'll put you in the group, and you can just join in the conversations and scroll through the topics. And we're also excited about a new thing with the Quonset group. We are doing a map. So I'm setting up a shareable Google map that we're going to have within the group. And people all over the country that are in the group are going to tag themselves on the map. Probably we're going to say just tag the nearest center of the nearest town or something, or city to where you are. So it'll keep some privacy in it, but then we can see where everyone is, because we've got people in Florida, Texas, Michigan, Ohio, Carolinas, California, Arizona, Pacific Northwest, all over. And everyone brings great ideas and good conversation. So it's really become a lot of fun. I just started that group kind of not totally on a whim, but I'm surprised at how fun the response has been to the Facebook group. So if you want in on that, join the Facebook group. So the questions that came in today on the Facebook group for today's show, Wally is asking a couple of good related questions. Talk about the foundations and process to find a cement contractor. So for your concrete, yeah, you need a good concrete contractor that is, you need, with everything that's going on with a Quonset hut, you really need to find someone that is interested in working with you on something that's not your typical thing. And in a lot of areas, the building a Quonset building is not a big deal. They're common agricultural and rural and utilitarian type buildings. But I think when you're trying to build one and make it a house, you're doing something that is pretty non-standard, and so which I think is fabulous. I mean, why be normal? Why do the boring thing that everyone else does? And for a do-it-yourself project, Quonset huts are great because you can do a lot of it yourself. And it's not always necessarily super easy, but it's doable. You can do it yourself, and you can get a roof over your head, without too much trouble with a Quonset hut. So, but to build one as a house, you're wanting to put more attention to some of the details and things that, if it was just going to be a dumb storage building, and I guess by dumb I just mean sort of generic and plain, Not that there's anything dumb about a Quonset storage building, they're awesome. But just a plain storage building versus a house, you're going to want closer attention to some of the details. I mentioned on last week's, 2 weeks ago video with my niece Molly joining in, and we talked about them. And my tip for the week that week was talking about if your end wall is going to be set back from the front edge of the building, which is what we did on ours, uh, you want to make sure the edge of your slab is set back as well, because it can create some waterproofing issues, or you want to be attentive to that. So you can watch that video if you want to get more of the detail on what I talked about there. But there's just these things. So even just pouring a slab, you want to be working with someone who is going to be interested in doing a good job with you and working collaboratively with you. And I think when you're talking to tradespeople out there and subcontractors, sometimes you have to talk to a few different ones to find the one that is really interested in working with you closely. Okay, because there's a lot of people out there that just want to kind of bang it out and move on to the next project. And you need to find the one that wants to work carefully with you to do a good job. Because that's important, and this is your house, and your house is going to be there for a long time, and you need it to be the way that you want it. Oh, we've got some folks in the chat. Grim Acres is over in the chat. Hey, thanks for joining us. That's awesome. Awesome that you're here. So with your contractors, yeah, you want to really you want to find a concrete contractor that will work with you and work carefully with you, and that will be interested in doing a good job. So anyway, how do you find the right person for that? Well, ask around, use your network, ask people you know, ask people in the area who've built something. And I think you'll probably find, the more you ask around, you'll probably find one or two names will be appearing more frequently and will rise to the top. So I think that you know, that's how we started with the only person we knew when we bought the land in Arizona was our realtor. And that's not entirely true, actually. Our friend Alex, who turned us on to the area and had a house over there already. And he had built his own house, so he was a good resource, so we asked a friend. And our realtor was a good resource. She had a list of people that she had worked with, or that she recommends, because it's her job as a realtor. And when you're a realtor and you're recommending other professionals, I think most realtors, that are good, take that pretty seriously. Like, they don't want to be in the business of recommending people that aren't going to do a good job. And their reputation is on the line a little bit when they recommend people. I know as an architect, I'm that way too. I'm very careful about who I recommend. And it's because I want my clients to have a good experience, or the people that I'm sharing information with, I want to have a good experience. So I'm very careful. As a professional myself in a service industry, it matters, who I would recommend. So ask a realtor that you've worked with or that you know. And yeah. So good. That's a place to start, right? But this is just a place to start, because they may recommend someone who does great work, but there may just be personality conflict or something. Like, you need someone that you can really work with. And so they need to do good work, but they need to be responsive. And they need to be willing to explain things and to take the time to go through it with you. So these are all things to consider. There's no magic pill for finding the right contractor. You just need to talk to a lot of people and expect that it's going to take you being resourceful. If you're building your own Quonset Hut house, you're a resourceful person already, and you can find the right people to work with. Okay. Now, just so for an example, on our Quonset build, we had a great excavator, a guy named Kevin, and he did a really fantastic job for us. He actually helped put in our road, so we had to build about a 700-foot driveway road into our property to get to the site where we wanted to put the house. And that was a trade-off because um, the electrical service came into the property from the farthest corner back compared to where we had good access from the road. And so, to get to the home site, we were either going to have to build a lot of driveway road in to get closer to the electricity, or we're going to have to trench the electricity further in to get closer, to have a shorter driveway. But in the end, closer to the electricity is where the property is a little bit higher and the view is much better. So we decided we'd much rather pay for the road in and have the house up higher, and then have less trenching on the electrical and less conduit and all of that stuff for the electrical feed. So that's how we worked that out. And so then when it was time to work with Kevin on the grading, I'll share some photos here. So here is let me show you my desktop, right? So here's a scene of our property before the two Quonsets went on. And so, but we had done just a first pass at rough grading, right? So you can see on the right here, we had to do a little bit of cut. The ground was a little bit higher on that end, and then straight ahead here, in this part of the image, back here, that was where, that's the workshop building. So that one, it was a little bit lower, right? So we had to kind of negotiate the terrain, and it's not that steep really, but over 75 or 100 feet, there's some drop. So we rough staked it, just measuring, not super careful, not dialing it in, but measured it out, and he got it graded, and then we, let me see. So then a couple, about a week passed, or a couple weeks, and then we were back at it because we're living in California and building this in northern Arizona, so we're not there all the time, and we couldn't just move straight through the process. A lot of back and forth. So then the next time we went out, Kevin had compacted. So Kevin is an excavator, and he built our road, and he trenched for the footings, but he didn't actually pour the concrete. We had a separate concrete contract. So Kevin compacted the gravel, so that's what you're seeing here, and chalked it out. Now we had a site plan where I measured, I dimensioned everything carefully, and I just, crazy me, I assumed that people were following the site plan, and it kind of was a little bit of a who's on first, because what had sort of happened was I figured these guys were following the site plan and checking the dimensions, and they thought that the stakes that had been set were the final locations. And so what had ended up happening was, on what you're seeing back here is well, let me show you another picture of our site plan. So here's so here's a satellite view, right, of what we have now. So so what we're looking at, okay, this is great. So in this photo of the grading, we're looking down through here. So to the right hand is we're going to see the arch of the building, and then in the back we're going to be looking down along the side of the building. So if we look over here on this aerial view, it's like in the photo of the grading, we're looking right down straight through here. Okay, so you see this trench that he had started to dig for the footing, and you see how crooked that is, because they were just, everyone assumed if someone else had checked it, and they were just digging. And you got to just check everything, okay? On your Quonset build, if you want it to turn out right, you just have to check everything. And I stopped him. And I'm like, this looks really crooked because I could see it. I'm standing here looking at it, and this is what I saw, and I could just tell, the perspective was not right. It just didn't look straight to me. So we measured and checked, and so now in this photo, these string lines that we have set up are actually indicating the correct alignment that it should be, right? So here, if I zoom in on this, right? He dug the trench. Just it would have been total. If they had built this, then our buildings would be completed and standing there, and you'd stand back and look, and you would visibly be able to tell that they were like, converging and not parallel, like you want them parallel. It was crazy, but Kevin is a great guy, and he knew it needed to be right, and he wanted it to be right for us. And he stopped his guys, and they went and they recompacted that and adjusted the trench and fixed it. And that's the guy that you need on your job. Things are going to go wrong. I don't blame Kevin that it didn't go right. And I credit him. That's like awesome that he just like stopped. They didn't. They were really great about it. And anyway, so that was, that's the kind of guy that you want working with you on your concrete, right? So then let's see. So then by the time, here they are, actually, it's all trenched. They're setting up the boards to pour the concrete, and the formwork, and then they poured. So it all turned out great. You got to really look at it frequently and really put your eyeballs on it, and and that's what you got. That's how you have to do it. So yeah, okay. Comment in the chat over there. Grim Acres says their house is almost 500 feet from the utility. Yeah, you gotta. Sometimes it depends. I mean, in a rural area, especially, you gotta and so there's reasons why it's worth it to build, that far away from the power, but you got to budget for it and you got to plan for it, and that's just one of the ways that you have to do it. Okay, Grim Acres also comments, in Michigan, my slab needs to be insulated. Great point. I'm glad you brought that up. So these two buildings are a garage and a workshop that I'm showing you right now, and neither one of them is set up to be heated. So we're just planning on winterizing the workshop. Right now over there, it's actually snowing today. It's crazy. It's not crazy. I'm from Southern California where it never snows. So to me, it's exciting that it's snowing, which is, that's just me being weird. But let me see. I wanted to get totally going off topic. Let me see. Sorry, let me look at something here. I want to see if I can bring up we have a live camera at the property. And I don't know if I can get it to work. I'm taking up all the bandwidth for the live video, so I don't know if it will, I don't know if this will work with the, live video stream. It may or it may not. So, boy, totally off topic, and now I'm distracted. Oh, it's snowing. Here's the snow falling at the compound. It's kind of fun. I'm trying to figure out if I can. I don't want to. Oh, wait, let me see. This is. Well, I'll set it up sometime that I can share the live feed right on the YouTube. I need to stay on track here, because the other question that Wally brought up, let's get back on topic, is a survey. So talking about different types of surveys, and this is related to the concrete and the grading. So, but yeah, if this on the insulating the slab, if your slab was if your building is heated and it's a slab on grade, you should totally insulate the slab. It will make a huge difference, and it's probably required by your local code. It's in the standard, building code anyway. So if you are subject to permitting and inspections, you will need to insulate your slab, and you should anyway because it is in the code, and you can have problems later if you don't really build it to code, even if nobody's checking. You should build it to code anyway. So with the survey, so this is a boundary survey of our property, and I colored it in just to explain some of the things that you get on a survey. And so the green and blue together are technically what is legally our property, but there is an easement. Okay, so an easement is just like um, a legally defined strip of land that is your property, but there can be a utility easement, which means that the utility company has the right to use that ground, to run their utility lines in, or there can be an access easement, and ours are access, I think primarily access easements. But that basically means, so on the left-hand side of our property, we have a 30-foot easement, and that runs all the way down along there on ours and the one to the south of us. And that means that people have a right to travel over that land to get to their land. So you can't just sell something. I mean, you sort of could, but I think it's actually illegal to sell someone just a landlocked piece of land with no access. You have to provide access, to the land if you're selling off a parcel. So this easement is to provide access. So the survey gives the dimensions of the property. So we can see here along each side it gives, and it's defined as a quarter of a portion of a larger plot. All right, so this started out as this larger, almost 40 acres, and then it was subdivided into these three, and I actually later, the lower half down here has been subdivided yet again, so it's divided into four. So on our west and our north, we have an easement. So on the west, there is a road, and that's the road. It's a county road that gets us to our property. On the north, it's unimproved. So the easement is there. It's just sort of on paper. In theory, the people to the east of us could demand access to that to build a road or a driveway over to get to their property. And that's, so there are easements. It's not uncommon here in Los Angeles to have utility easements going like down the middle of a block or through a block to bring power and sewer lines into the block, into the properties, to feed to the houses that way. So your survey will show any easements, and it's in our case, we are required to be set back from the property line to build our building. Now it's 10 acres, so the setbacks hardly really matter that much, but it's part of what you have to do. So from the easement, we have to be set back another 30 feet. But from the property line where there is no easement, we just have to be set back 30 feet from the property line. And then within that interior space of that, we can build, more or less wherever we want. And so that's something that, that's part of how a survey can work. Now, this is not a topographic survey. This is just a boundary survey. So, topo surveys can be expensive. If we had had a steeper property, we would be required to have a topo survey of our area of where we're putting the buildings. But I checked, and our county does not require a topo survey for the plan submittal if it's under a certain amount of flatness that we clearly are. So I think it was maybe an inch per foot or a couple of inches per foot or something along those lines. And if it's steeper, they do require a topo survey. They would require like like hydrology studies. So like where is the rainwater going to run off from your building, and where's the water flowing around the property? Because you don't want to be building in a steep area where there's like drainage that's going to, you know, uphill, it's going to drain water right through where you're trying to put your building. That would be a disaster. Obviously, nobody wants that. So those are some of the things that you have to look for. But there's a good resource online. There's a cool tool that I've found, and that is a website called TopoZone. If you go to topozone.com, they pretty much have the whole US just kind of mapped out with all the available topo maps kind of compiled together. So I thought we'll just search around and look at, if we want to look at, like, say, Joshua Tree. Okay, I'm not being as specific enough. But if we browse by state, you can go and get the California map, and you can just zoom in. Okay, so here's the Sierras, Sequoias. If we go down here, Bakersfield, National Forest. Go out a little further. Here's Joshua Tree National Park. Okay, this is kind of a neat area that I like. So you can zoom in, and now if we zoom in far enough, say you're looking at a property out here, and you want to get some topo information. So now here, topographic. Okay, so now we can start to see topographic data for this area. And you just can read, so here's topo line 3200, and here's elevation 3100 over here. And so, you know, you can tell these are 20-foot increments of slope. Okay, so it's, you know, that's pretty flat, but then you've got areas up in here where it's pretty steep, and so you can see, you know, a much steeper slope. So I could tell from this, you know, from this area, looking at a map like this of our property, and I could tell where our parcel more or less was. You can kind of overlay things and get a sense of it and tell, you know, how steep your topography is. Or I don't know. This is just I love maps anyway. Maps are fascinating, and the TopoZone map, you know, it shows you interesting features, like what are those mountains called, and it, like, gives all this information and stuff. So yeah, it's a good thing to know about. It's like I have it bookmarked and it's in my toolkit, and it is a resource that I enjoy, you know, using online. So you can find topo maps of your area if that's relevant for you. At least to get some sense of it. It's not super detailed. It doesn't have all the fine, you know, detailed lines. It's not 1-foot increments or 5-foot increments or anything like that. But it's some useful information. All right. So so that's yeah. There's another type of survey as well that I wanted to mention. It's called an ALTA survey. It's basically like an aerial survey. So an ALTA survey or an aerial survey is typically they fly over, and then they use the they sort of take they have 2 cameras, and then they can use the like the parallax and the depth that they can observe from the 2, just like your eyes have binocular vision, right? So to judge depth, and they can actually translate that into a kind of topo. But if it's critical, you need to make sure, if they're doing an aerial survey, that's usually good, very good at boundary lines and the easements. But detail work for actual features on the ground, like if you've got a boulder on your property that you want to build the house around, or some, you know, specific features like certain trees that you want to build carefully around in a certain way, or just specific features, you want to make sure that your surveyor is going to send a ground crew. If possible, it'll cost more, but and it's also, I could actually do a tutorial on accurate measuring on the ground for features that are not, you know, on a grid. So I'll put that on my list, because there are some techniques for measuring your own, doing your own kind of ground survey a little bit. It's harder to get the elevation data, but just to measure trees and rocks and features, which could be kind of cool. Um, so if you're getting an aerial survey, ask them if they're going to follow up with a ground crew to check and get more data. If they aren't, you might ask about that. Does it cost extra? How much does it cost? What is included? What are you trying to get measured? That kind of thing. All right, so that's what I wanted to talk about today. I hope that's useful. It was a little bit less Quonset specific, but hopefully it was good, just general information for you for something that is actually really important. So I think the big takeaways today are check everything, get good people on your team, and be resourceful with your network to find those right people to work with, and you'll do a great job. I know you can do it. All right, so thanks for joining me today for Quonset Q&A. If you are not getting my newsletter, and I'm getting the February newsletter ready pretty soon here, go over to clevermoderns.com and scroll down on any page on the website. You can get a sign-up form and get my newsletter because there's great information going out there. And join us on the Facebook group, like I mentioned at the top of the show. So thanks for joining us today. I had a great time. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you next week.